The arrival, the void between stars shimmered like heat waves over desert sand. One by one, tiers in reality opened across the darkness, each one birthing a vessel of war from the depths of hyperspace. The Cathara armada emerged in perfect formation, their ships gleaming like polished obsidian against the starfield, 9,900 vessels strong, representing the combined might of 12 conquered worlds. Admiral Zexera stood upon the bridge of his flagship, the Dominator's fist, watching the final ships take their positions. His forearms moved in practiced gestures across the command console while his three eyes focused on the tactical display. The Cathara were apex predators among the stars, their gray-scaled bodies built for war, their minds sharp as plasma cutters. They had never known defeat. "Admiral," came the voice of his tactical officer, Commander Roth, "all fleets report ready. The target system lies ahead. Preliminary scans show minimal defensive capabilities." Zexthora's mandibles clicked in what passed for amusement among his species. "Minimal, Commander. These humans possess technology barely beyond fusion rockets. They have not even mastered faster-than-light travel. This will not be a battle, it will be an extermination." The massive fleet began its final approach toward the Sol system. Each vessel was a masterpiece of Cathara engineering, built from the bones of dead worlds and powered by the tears of the conquered. Their smallest destroyers dwarfed the largest human constructions, while their dreadnoughts could crack planets like eggs. As they drew closer to the third planet, Earth appeared on their screens, blue and green and beautiful, wrapped in white, clouds like a jewel in the void. Cities glittered on the night side, their lights spelling out humanity's presence in bright constellations. To the Cathara, it looked helpless. "Sir," Commander Roth's voice carried a note of confusion, "we are receiving a transmission from the planet. It appears to be ... a greeting." On the main screen, the image of a human female appeared. She wore a simple blue uniform with no visible weapons, her dark hair pulled back in a practical manner. Her brown eyes held no fear, only a calm intelligence that made Admiral Zextera's scales ripple with irritation. "I am Captain Alina Vasquez of the United Earth Defense Force," she said, her voice carrying clearly across the void. "Welcome to our solar system. We know why you're here, and we want to talk." The bridge erupted in harsh laughter from the Cathara officers. The idea that these soft-bodied mammals thought they could negotiate with the masters of a dozen worlds was beyond amusing talk. Zexera's voice boomed across the communication channel. "You will surrender your world, humans. Your species will serve the Cathara Empire, or you will perish. There is no middle ground." Captain Vasquez nodded slowly, as if she had expected this response. "We figured you might say that, Admiral Zextara, isn't it? We've been watching your empire for longer than you know. We've seen what you do to worlds that resist you. We've also seen what you do to worlds that surrender." "Then you know your fate is sealed," the Admiral replied. "You have 1 hour to transmit your surrender. After that, we will begin bombardment of your major population centers." "Actually," Captain Vasquez said, and for the first time she smiled, "we have a counter-proposal. How about you turn your ships around and never come back? Consider it a friendly warning from your new neighbors." The transmission cut out, leaving the Cathara bridge in stunned silence. Then the laughter began again. Louder this time, but Commander Roth was not laughing. He was staring at his sensor readings with growing confusion. "Admiral," he said quietly, "I'm detecting some unusual energy signatures throughout the system. The humans have more installations than we initially counted. Zexthara waved dismissively. Mining colonies and research stations. Nothing that our weapons cannot handle. Begin the attack formation. We will show these humans what happens when they mock the Cathara. But as the great fleet moved into position, something strange began to happen. The asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter, previously appearing as nothing more than space debris, began to shimmer. What had looked like ordinary rocks were now revealing themselves as something else entirely. Admiral, Commander Roth's voice was urgent now. Those aren't asteroids, they're ships. Hundreds of them, maybe thousands. They've been hiding in the debris field. On Earth, deep beneath the Swiss Alps, Dr. James Chen stood in the control room of the Prometheus protocol. Around him, banks of computers hummed with barely contained energy, while technicians monitored systems that had been secretly built over the past century. The moment humanity had first detected alien signals, they had begun preparing for this day. Dr. Chen, one of the technicians, called out, "Ghost Fleet is fully powered and ready. The Cathara have taken the bait." Dr. Chen nodded grimly. The Ghost Fleet was humanity's greatest secret. A collection of ships built not on Earth, but in the outer reaches of the solar system, hidden in the asteroid belt, in the shadow of Jupiter's moons, even in the tail of comets. They had waited for decades for this moment. "Activate the protocol," he ordered. "Let them see what humans do when we have time to prepare." Back in space, the Cathara fleet was beginning to realize they had walked into something far more complex than a simple conquest. The asteroid belt was alive with hidden vessels, each one bristling with weapons that defied their understanding of human technology. The moons of Jupiter were revealing themselves as massive military installations, their surfaces opening like flower petals to expose weapon arrays that could shatter worlds. "How is this possible?" Zexthara demanded, his three eyes wide with disbelief. "Our intelligence reports showed them as a primitive species." Commander Roth was frantically working at his console, trying to make sense of the readings. "Sir, I'm detecting energy signatures consistent with antimatter weapons. And these power readings, they're using controlled fusion on a scale we've never seen before." The first shots came from the direction of Saturn. Not energy beams or plasma bolts, but something far more terrifying. Kinetic projectiles accelerated to significant fractions of light speed, invisible until they struck. 3 Cathara destroyers simply vanished, their hulls vaporized by the impact of what amounted to relativistic bullets. "Impossible," Zek whispered, but his disbelief was shattered by the next wave of attacks. From the asteroid belt, camouflaged ships began to emerge, their hulls scarred and pitted to look like space debris. But these were no ordinary vessels. They moved with purpose and precision. Their weapons, systems unlike anything in the Cathara databases. Captain Vasquez's voice crackled over the communication system again. But this time, she was no longer alone. Behind her, the bridge of her ship was revealed to be a massive command center, with hundreds of officers coordinating the defense of their world. "Admiral," she said, her voice calm despite the chaos erupting around them, "you made a fundamental error. You assumed that because we hadn't developed faster-than-light travel, we were primitive. But humans have something you don't understand. We have patience, we have time, and we have each other." The Cathara fleet was now under attack from multiple directions. The hidden installations throughout the solar system had revealed themselves, and they were not defensive positions. They were weapons platforms, each one designed for a single purpose: to destroy anything that threatened Earth. "Admiral," Commander Roth's voice was strained, "we're losing ships faster than we can count. These humans, they've turned their entire solar system into a fortress. Zexera's scales had gone pale, a sign of fear among his species. How many ships have we lost? Over 2,000 in the first wave, sir. And they're not stopping, these weapons. They're not just advanced, they're strategically placed. It's like they knew exactly where we would position our fleet. The truth was even more disturbing than Commander Roth suspected. Humanity had indeed known exactly where the Kithara would position their fleet, because they had been studying their tactics for over 50 years. Every alien transmission, every conquered world, every strategic decision had been analyzed and catalogued. The humans had built their defenses not to meet an unknown threat, but to counter a specific enemy. Dr. Chen watched the battle unfold from his underground command center, his face grim but determined. Phase 2, he ordered. Deploy the hunters. In the depths of space, new contacts began to appear on the Kithara sensors. These were not the hidden installations or the camouflaged ships from the asteroid belt. These were something else entirely. Small, fast, and deadly, they moved like schools of fish through the void, their hulls absorbing sensor sweeps and their weapon systems unlike anything the Kithara had ever encountered. What are those things? Zextera demanded, but his officers had no answers. The small ships moved with an intelligence that suggested they were not entirely controlled by human pilots. They struck with precision, targeting critical systems on the Kithara vessels, crippling rather than destroying when possible. Captain Vasquez appeared on the screen again, but now her expression was harder, more determined. Admiral, your fleet is being systematically dismantled. We're not doing this because we enjoy war. We're doing it because you gave us no choice. But it's not too late. Order your remaining ships to withdraw, and we'll let them go. But Admiral Zexthara was too proud, too arrogant to accept defeat from what he still saw as a primitive species. All ships, concentrate fire on the third planet. If we cannot conquer them, we will destroy them. It was the worst decision he could have made. The moment the Kithara fleet turned their weapons toward Earth, the true power of humanity's defenses revealed itself. The planet itself began to fire back. Asterisk, the reckoning. The surface of Earth erupted in light as massive weapon systems, hidden beneath mountains and ocean floors, revealed themselves to the cosmos. What the Kithara had thought was an undefended world was actually the most heavily fortified planet in the galaxy. Every continent hid weapons capable of reaching across the solar system. Every ocean concealed launch bays for vessels that defied conventional physics. Admiral Zexthora watched in horror as his mighty fleet, the pride of 12 conquered worlds, began to dissolve under the withering fire from a species they had dismissed as primitive. The humans had not just prepared for war, they had transformed their entire civilization into a weapon. Status report. He bellowed over the chaos of his bridge, where sparks flew from damaged consoles, and his officers struggled to maintain formation. Commander. Roth's voice was barely audible over the alarms. 7,000 ships lost, sir. The humans are using weapons we don't understand. Their projectiles are moving at impossible speeds, and their energy weapons are tearing through our shields like they weren't even there. On the main screen, the image of Captain Vasquez flickered back to life. Behind her, the human command center was a model of calm efficiency, with officers calmly coordinating the destruction of an invasion fleet that had conquered a dozen worlds. Admiral, she said, her voice carrying a note of genuine sadness, this is your final warning. Order your remaining ships to withdraw immediately, or we will destroy them all. Zexthora's mandibles clicked in rage. You think you have won, human? This is merely the first wave. The Cathara Empire spans 1,000 worlds. We will return with 10 times this number of ships. Captain Vasquez nodded slowly. We know about your empire, Admiral. We've been watching you for decades. We know about the slave worlds, the strip mine, planets, the civilizations you've destroyed. That's why we can't let you leave to report back about our defenses. The Admiral's 3 eyes widened in disbelief. You would commit genocide. You would destroy an entire fleet. No, Captain Vasquez replied firmly. We would defend our home. But we're not monsters, Admiral. We're giving your people a choice. Any ship that powers down its weapons and surrenders will be spared. Any ship that continues to threaten Earth will be destroyed. Across the Cathara fleet, individual commanders began to make their own decisions. Some, loyal to the Empire and their admiral, continued to fight. Others, seeing the futility of their situation, began to power down their weapons and transmit surrender codes. Commander Roth was among the latter. Admiral, he said quietly, we cannot win this battle. The humans have turned their entire solar system into a trap. We walked into it blind, and now we're paying the price. But Zexthara would not hear of surrender. We are Cathara. We do not bow to inferior species. All ships, ramming speed. If we cannot conquer them, we will die with honor. It was a fatal mistake. The moment the remaining Cathara vessels began their desperate charge toward Earth, the human defenses revealed their final secret. The small, fast ships that had been harassing the fleet suddenly revealed their true nature. They were not piloted by humans at all, but by artificial intelligences specifically designed for space combat. Dr. Chen watched from his command center as the AI hunters, humanity's greatest technological achievement, began their final assault. Each one was a masterpiece of engineering, capable of thinking and reacting faster than any biological mind. Their weapons systems guided by perfect mathematical precision. Sir, one of his technicians reported, the AI fleet is requesting permission to engage in close-quarters combat. Dr. Chen hesitated for a moment. The AI hunters were programmed with strict limitations to prevent them from becoming a threat to humanity. But in close combat, those limitations would be pushed to their absolute limits. Permission granted, he said finally. End this. The AI hunters moved like a swarm of mechanical angels, their hulls gleaming in the light of distant stars. They flowed around the charging Cathara vessels like water around rocks, their weapons systems finding weak points in armor that their designers had thought impenetrable. One by one, the great ships of the Cathara fleet fell silent. Some were destroyed outright, their hulls cracked open by weapons that struck with surgical precision. Others were disabled, their crews left alive but helpless as their ships drifted powerless through space. Admiral Zexthora watched the destruction of his fleet from the bridge of his flagship, his 3 eyes filled with a mixture of rage and disbelief. How had this happened? How had a species that couldn't even leave their own star system destroyed the greatest military force the galaxy had ever known? Admiral, Commander Roth's voice was quiet now, resigned to their fate. We have 17 ships left. 17 out of 9,900. We need to surrender. But before the Admiral could respond, the Dominator's fist shuddered under a massive impact. The humans had decided to make their own point about the futility of resistance. The flagship's main weapons array simply ceased to exist, vaporized by a weapon that left no trace of how it had been fired. Captain Vasquez's voice filled the bridge one final time. Admiral, Zexara, your ship is next. Order your remaining vessels to stand down, or we will finish what you started. For a long moment, the bridge was silent, except for the sound of failing systems and the quiet prayers of terrified crew members. Then, slowly, Admiral Zextora's shoulders sagged in defeat. "All ships," he said, his voice barely above a whisper, "stand down. Transmit surrender codes." The battle was over. Of the mighty Cathara armada that had arrived so confidently at the edge of the Sol system, only 17 ships remained. 17 ships that would carry the survivors back to their empire with a story that would change the balance of power in the galaxy forever. As the human fleet began to secure their prisoners and tend to their own minimal casualties, Captain Vasquez stood on the bridge of her command ship and looked out at the stars. They had won, but she knew this was only the beginning. The galaxy was vast, and there were other threats out there, other species that might see Earth as a target. But they would be ready. Humanity had learned the most important lesson of all. In a universe full of predators, the key to survival was not to be the strongest or the fastest, but to be the most prepared. And humans, with their patience and their ingenuity and their refusal to accept defeat, were very good at being prepared. Commander Roth, now the highest-ranking surviving officer of the Cathara fleet, found himself in a human detention facility aboard one of their ships. The accommodations were clean and comfortable, far better than what his own people would have provided to prisoners. A human officer, a young woman with short blonde hair and kind eyes, approached his cell. "Commander," she said, her voice gentle, "my name is Lieutenant Sarah Chen. I'm here to discuss your situation." Roth looked up at her with his 3 eyes, still trying to process what had happened. "Your people, they destroyed the greatest fleet in the galaxy." "How?" Lieutenant Chen smiled sadly. "We had time, Commander. When you've been preparing for war for over a century, when you've studied your enemy's tactics and built your defenses accordingly, you tend to be ready for anything." "But your technology," Roth insisted, "your weapons are beyond anything we've seen. How did a species that hasn't even left their own star system develop such advanced capabilities?" "Because we didn't waste our time conquering other worlds," Chen replied. "We spent it learning. We spent it building. We spent it preparing for the day when someone like you would come calling." The truth was even more profound than she was telling him. Humanity had indeed spent over a century preparing for this moment, but they had not done it alone. Every alien signal they had intercepted, every crashed probe they had recovered, every piece of technology they had reverse-engineered had been shared freely among all Earth's nations. For the first time in human history, the entire species had united behind a single goal: survival. The old divisions of nation and ideology had been set aside in favor of a more fundamental truth. In a universe full of predators, humanity's greatest strength was not their technology or their weapons, but their ability to work together when it mattered most. The 17 surviving Cathara ships began their long journey home, their crews forever changed by what they had witnessed. They carried with them a story that would spread throughout the galaxy, the tale of a species that had seemed weak and primitive, but had proven to be the most dangerous predator of all. Back on Earth, the celebration was subdued. They had won this battle, but the war was far from over. The galaxy was vast, and there were other threats out there, other species that might see humanity as a target, but they would be ready. They had learned the most important lesson of all. In a universe full of predators, the key to survival was not to be the strongest or the fastest, but to be the most prepared. And humans, with their patience and their ingenuity and their refusal to accept defeat, were very good at being prepared. As the stars wheeled overhead and the solar system returned to its quiet vigilance, humanity began to plan for the next challenge. They had announced themselves to the galaxy in the most dramatic way possible, and now they would have to live with the consequences. But they were ready for whatever came next. After all, they were human.